All right. Well, Christopher, welcome to the ODAT Chad podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. And it was so fun to realize the other day that we have some mutual friends and that we didn't know about because obviously we have a lot of mutual friends from the online recovery community, right?
For sure.
Yeah, so I'm so glad we finally got a chance to connect, and I can't wait to hear your story. And then we'll talk about some of the work that you do, some of the outreach that you do to help others. I know you're really big on service, which I completely admire. So we'll get into all of that. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Yay. So I usually start with like family of origin stuff. Do you want to tell me a little bit about how you grew up, maybe a little bit about like what your parents did for a living and that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. My dad, growing up, my dad was in the Air Force um, when him and my mom got pregnant with me. My mom was 16, which puts him at about 17. So they hurried up. They had to, from Minnesota, they had to go to South Dakota because that's the only place that would legally marry him, and they wanted to get married before they had me, and they beat it by a month. So that's a good thing. But my dad being in the service, he was alcoholic, identifies as an alcoholic. He relapsed twice, or not. I don't even like to. Like I said, I like to change the language, but he calls it relapse, so we'll just go with relapse. After 13 years, twice. So, and I think he's
Oh,
at about
wow.
14 years this time around. So, I grew up with Alcoholics Anonymous. Was like it was like a treat for me to be able to go to. They used to have like carnivals, and
Yeah.
his dad was alcoholic, identified as alcoholic, and then my dad had 5 brothers, and they were all alcoholic. Between my uncles, my aunts, my grandmas, my grandpas, my mom, my dad, everybody had alcohol in their life, but they were going to Alcoholics Anonymous. So
Wow.
that was that's what really attracted me to alcohol. I'm like, wow, I'm better than that. I'm a professional alcoholic. So
I'm a professional. I can handle it.
a lot of them were on the marijuana maintenance plan back then. Um, Not so much anymore, thankfully, but so marijuana was like a cigarette to me. Everybody was smoking it. So I never really, I tried it a couple of times and it just got me sick to my stomach. I got dizzy. Luckily I never liked that. So I stayed away from that. But so, yeah, like I said, I grew up around Alcoholics Anonymous. And can I say that on here?
Yeah, you just did.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, they'd have a carnival, and they have clowns and games.
Picnics and all that stuff.
For 5 years old, I mean, some of my best childhood memories are my grandpa bringing me to this old mansion that still holds probably 100 meetings a week.
Wow.
Um, it's called 2218, and I think it's going on, I want to say 70 years that
That is
it's
a
been.
long time.
Yeah, but so I have a lot of good memories of Alcoholics Anonymous and AA and NA and all the 12-step groups. So
So, having been exposed to both adults in your life that were drinking, and I can't imagine it was all fun and games, right? At some point, you decided that it would be a good idea and you wanted to have some fun, or were you curious? How old were you when you started drinking?
the first time that I can recall, and then is when I was 13, but all the relatives would tell me stories about, when I was 2 years old, they'd have, poker games and cribbage night or whatever. And when everybody would pass out, I would go up to the table and start sucking on the ice cubes and whatever, the
Hmm.
Southern Comfort. My mom said I really like Southern Comfort for some reason,
Sweet.
but I didn't many years later. I lost the taste for that quick. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so 13 was my first real memory of, sneaking it and
Hmm.
drinking that first beer. So, and that was my calling. I got that warm fuzzy feeling, but from even that first day, I drank until I threw up. I mean,
The
so I
first time.
yeah, so I mean, looking back on it now, that alcoholic gene was definitely in me. So Especially, even just addict. I mean, I never did anything, if it says take 2 aspirin, I'll take 6 because, 2 is
Two's good, six is
good
better.
for you. Yep. 6
Wow,
works.
that is extreme. I was always going like 4.
I never even counted.
You're all
So,
just a little extra. I get it.
yep. So,
But do you know
yeah,
why did you start drinking? Did you think it would just be fun, or were you just curious, or were you like running from something? Because
I
a lot of people are like running from something.
no, it was pretty much peer pressure at first.
Hmm.
Everybody else was, I was on the hockey team, and like I said, poker night was a big deal back then, and so our parents would all sit at the poker table and play cards, and then we'd run out and sneak the beer in the back and run outside and drink them as fast as we could. And so it was more peer pressure. How I see it now, looking back, that's how I started. But
I wonder, boys that are athletes seems like there's this it's like a rite of passage for manhood. It's like there's all these rules associated to what it means to be a man in sort of like that athletic world, right? It's like you can't cry, can't show your feelings unless it's anger, right? Or lust. Um, were you encompassed in that kind of a world where it was like, oh, you do all the you scary, brave things, adrenaline junkie type stuff,
oh yeah, oh for sure. And back then
fighting?
smoking was a big deal, but we after a while we couldn't smoke no more because of hockey, and then the high school, um, they wouldn't let the teachers could smoke in the smoking lounge, and when they stopped letting them smoke, then we had to switch to chewing tobacco. So we were always up to, if you told me not to do it, I was gonna do it, and if you told me to do it, I probably wasn't gonna do it. So I had them
Right.
right from day one, as long as I can remember.
Isn't that funny? It's like this internal resistance that seems to be like a common thread among people in recovery. It's like there's so much resistance to being told what to do.
Right. And I was really shy, and I couldn't talk. I couldn't get in front of nobody. I couldn't hold a conversation. I mean, I'm still shy, I think, but
I think
alcohol
maybe you got over it.
alcohol changed that though. Then I was a
Yeah.
kid, and but I always took it to that extreme. I always took it a little too far to where I had to be the center of attention. I had to drink the beer the fastest. I had to drink the most, and I always had it. And everybody would call me because I was the party guy. That's
Right.
what
You were
happened.
the life of the party.
Yep. So,
And what kind of consequences did you start incurring?
my first, well, back at 10 years old, I got caught selling. My dad had stems and seeds, and it was back. I'm pretty sure 35 millimeter cameras were just got invented because of those little camera cases.
All right.
Always,
Yeah.
always separate them, and I didn't know any different. Um, but so all the older kids on the bus we lived in trailer court back then, would, hey, get me some of that stuff from your dad. They all knew. And so I got caught selling it, or not selling it, but giving it to him basically by his mom. And that was my first real consequences of, you know, alcohol, drug related, substance related. My dad made me watch Angels in the Outfield with Gary Coleman over and over and over for like 6 days.
That was torture for you. Was he sober at that point?
He was sober at that point. Yep.
But he had weed?
Well, he was, yes, he was in AA.
Alcohol.
He was marijuana maintenance plan. Yep.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of controversy around there's a lot of controversy around like the marijuana maintenance program these days. Like there's the tool schools of thought, the abstinence and then the harm reduction.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah. So
It's touchy. I'm an abstinence guy, but I can see that. I've seen it work. You get into that MAT, and I've seen it help other people. So I'm nobody to judge.
yeah.
I'm just got to take care of myself. And
Yeah. I have the same sort of disposition about it. I'm all about abstinence for me.
Mhm.
And I don't think you can really count clean time. Like, and the whole, how do you feel about the whole counting sobriety? Because I feel it's on one hand, there's something to be said for long-term sobriety, like complete abstinence. Um, on the other hand, I feel like so much emphasis on time actually fosters shame. Have you seen that as well?
Oh, for sure. I think that's what keeps a lot of people out of the rooms is, just the shame because, if they do have a reoccurrence or go back to use or switch to, change addictions, they don't want to tell anybody, so they'll hide it or whatever. But um, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of an abstinence guy. I like to try to push it, but weaning off. I've bought alcohol for recoveries because they're going through withdrawals, and I've had people have strokes. Right in front of me. One guy bit his tongue
Oh
off. One
my.
guy
Oh, are you
bit his,
kidding?
for real.
He
Yeah.
bit his tongue off. He had a seizure or something?
Yep, he had a seizure because he tried quitting on his own, and he almost bled to death because I don't know. Your tongue must have a
It's
lot of
very, it's vascular. Yeah.
but
Oh my God.
he was doing laundry, and his brother shouldn't even have been home, but for some reason his brother was home, and so yeah, I seen him have a stroke, and then I seen another guy who hit his head and split it wide open, and he's got a lot of mental issues because of that. So withdrawal from alcohol is deadly. Withdrawal from like opioids or other drugs, you wish you were dead, but
Right.
not deadly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if they want to do harm reduction or what have them, whatever pathway that works for them. I mean, Arlena best. You know, you, I know we talked about this the other day, but your husband probably thinks he knows them better. But we all know deep down inside right from wrong. I mean, I think everybody. I think I can speak for everybody. Good from bad, and so when you do something bad, you feel bad inside, like you said, you shame, and then you shame yourself, and then it gets carried, and then you self-medicate, whether
Right. Yeah.
whatever substance you choose. But
I've been having this conversation a lot lately about secondary injuries, like self-inflicted. So there's this idea that, like, we're human, right? We're all going to make mistakes, and there's strength in recognizing, oh, that was a mistake. And I don't really like to think in terms of right and wrong, but I do understand cause and effect, and sometimes I choose wrong and I cause harm to myself or others. But anyway, let's say you just make a mistake. I said something to my son the other day. It was first thing when I woke up, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. But before, yeah, if I made a mistake or did something or said something stupid, I would then beat myself up for it, that's like the secondary wound, right? Or secondary, like, it's like secondary trauma. It's like I did something stupid and I could have just acknowledged it and moved on. But, in the past, I would have been, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I said that. Blah, 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 blah. And I feel like by using the tools of recovery that, especially like meditation, like it gives me a little bit of pause so that I can, just feel the feelings and then like let it go, like not attach to it and still own my part, right? Like I apologize to my son and be more mindful. You know
right.
what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's like
Yeah.
that secondary wound stuff that we it's like we're abusive to ourselves.
Yeah, and then we got to hide it and hide it from everybody that you didn't make a mistake, and you can't even admit it. Can't even admit that I made a mistake to myself, and then that's when I start getting myself in trouble. So yeah, just
Exactly.
owning your, it's a mistake. You gotta.
Oh,
It happens. We're
yeah.
like you said, we're human, and if it happens, I make a poor choice. Is it really a mistake? I mean, because all everything I've done bad and that I feel is bad. And, over my life experiences, I've learned finally, it took till I was 40 years old, but I finally learned from them lessons. And I don't regret nothing that I've ever done because it made me the man I am today.
Right.
But, and without them experiences, I have an uncle that I work with, and he's never drank alcohol or never done a drug. He's the youngest of the 5 brothers of my dad's. So he watched, his
Wow.
dad and his brothers. So he just never touched it. Still to this day.
Wow.
We work together side by side, and he's so naive. It's like I tell him, I'm like, go get drunk or go get high.
You do? Why would you say that to him?
He doesn't have that life experience. He doesn't understand addiction. He doesn't understand recovery. He doesn't understand a whole lot. I always tell him.
Does he lack empathy?
I wouldn't say that, no, because as far as family life and stuff, he's very empathetic. He's a very good person, but he's just naive. If I dropped him off downtown New York at 2:00 in the morning, he ain't going to survive. He doesn't know. He doesn't have. I got a PhD in street smarts.
Right, piled high and deep.
Right. Yep.
In BS.
So, but on the other hand, if you drop me off at Harvard at 2 in the afternoon, I probably won't survive.
Come on, those nerds couldn't hold a candle to you. You played hockey.
I'm going to school now, so I'm finally figuring out.
That's amazing. But you know what? I feel like I want to backtrack for a second because I didn't ask you like what was did you have that moment where you realized you were powerless over the alcohol? Like you finally got beat down to it and then you decided to do something about it?
I had it quite a few times growing up. My first time was, my birthday is January 21st, so it was my golden birthday. The weekend before, I had drank until I threw up again, and I always did. And so I quit drinking at 21, thinking this isn't good for me. I can't do it like all my friends do it. So my golden birthday, I sat in a casino out in Chicago and drank non-alcoholic beer. I had 30 of them because I counted.
You were very hydrated that day.
Right, but it was the worst headache ever. But so that was my first attempt at quitting, just on my own. And then, getting back to the consequences, there was quite a few of them. I had 3 DWIs, should have had, thousands and thousands. And I was drinking and driving pretty much every day. So, the consequences started adding up. And so I had to go. I always say, you still have a choice. If the judge asks you, do you want treatment or do you want to go to jail? So I still chose treatment. So, I still made that choice. But it was just outpatient treatment. And I had lost my license. So I biked there every day. And as soon as I got done, I'd go straight to the bar on my bike and crash my bike on the way home because I was just so drunk, and then go back to treatment the next day. And, they give me an amethyst rock. This place was called Amethyst. And they're like, oh, you're the best recovery we've ever had. You're so great. And after I graduated, and just did whatever they wanted to say. Yep. Whatever they wanted to hear, just so the judge was happy. And, I walked away scot-free again, so no real consequences until I had my son was I got divorced after my first son. So that was a consequence.
Yeah.
Wife left me, kicked me out for many good reasons. And so then I dated my buddy's sister, which is, I broke rule number 1, dating my best friend's sister, who was 11 years younger than me.
Scandalous.
Yeah. We went out on one date, and she said she didn't want to keep going out or whatever. And then all of a sudden, like 9 months later, back then it was MySpace.
Oh my God, MySpace.
Yeah. And
yeah.
So she had a baby, and I'm like, oh, congratulations, good for you. And all of a sudden she's like, well, we need to talk. I'm like, oh boy. So I went and met my son at that time. So I had a 10-year-old, and then I ended up with another son and a daughter they're like 16 days apart from another girl.
You are a whore. No.
Yeah. My buddies
Sorry,
always
I'm just
tease me
kidding.
that they're ghetto twins because
Oh,
ghetto twins are
got
14
it.
apart and two different moms. So
16 days apart.
yeah,
Okay, so 3 kids.
6 total now.
Oh.
So I have 22, 13, 12, 12, 5, and 3.
Okay.
So yeah, we started after I met my kid with my son. I didn't know the other mom at all. So
You didn't know the other mom?
no, I didn't know her at all. She was just some girl that wanted to bring me home from the bar because I was too drunk to drive, and and
Right.
she was a friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing. So,
Oh my goodness.
but my buddy's sister, after I met my son, we started hanging out quite a bit, and all of a sudden we dated for 6 years, and then she kind of got sick of me drinking. Minnesota in the wintertime we get laid off a lot, being outdoor seasonal workers.
Oh, seasonal worker. Yeah.
Bricklayers, caulkers. So we get laid off, and we just sit, we drink from the minute we woke up to the minute. Because we were living with her brother too, so that didn't help.
Your friend. Oh my God.
So I used him as a crutch, like
right.
As long as I get everybody else drunk, then nobody can judge me, and so that's what I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, then she left, and I went and got my own studio apartment, or bounced around my sister's house for a week, and then they caught on. She knew how to find all my bottles, and
oh my goodness, because she's grown up in the same recovery or AA awareness that you did.
Sure. Yep.
So she could spot it quickly, right?
Yep. And so she pretty much kicked me out, and so I ended up living in a hotel for a couple of weeks. The worst hotel ever, right next to our state capitol. It's torn down now, but I mean, people were overdosed in the elevator, and it wasn't.
Jeez.
$40 a week kind of thing. Just, but then I ended up getting my studio apartment right above this bar downtown St. Paul, right next to my job, because I didn't have a license. I could walk to work.
That's a good setup, right? Above the bar, close to work.
Brilliant. I was going to prove everybody that, I'm not alcoholic. I knew the whole time that I was, but.
Right.
Well, my girlfriend started coming back to me, a little bit here and there, because I'd tell her I wasn't drinking, but I'd hide it, I just hide it, learn to hide it better. And what I was getting to was that whole consequence thing. My last big charge was felony terroristic threat. And my son was playing hockey out with this nice little plaza. They have a farmer's market and everything. And right now, up front of our door of our apartment, he's playing floor hockey, and all of a sudden there's these transients that come on from the bus from Chicago. They come to Minnesota because we have a lot of tax money, more than most states, and they come for recovery.
A lot of benefits and
for sure, free treatment, food stamps, what have you. But this one guy was walking along the restaurant area and asking for dollars, and nobody would, if you didn't give him $1, he would spit in your face. And he had like one tooth, and just, I don't know, he had a lot of problems. I mean, I felt bad for him, and I kind of knew him, but I told him to get out, take a hike, get out from my apartment. And he ended up taking my kid by the hood and dragging him around down to the alleyway. And so I grabbed my kid, I brought him into the security guard. I said, hey, can you watch him for 2 seconds? I go, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I ended up my apartment was right there by the security guard. And in my son's toy box was a little pellet BB gun, soft pellet BB gun. And so I went out there and I'm like, all right, now get out of here. And I'm waving a gun, and he left and everything. And a couple hours later, my son and I were in the house playing video games. And sudden I heard sirens outside the apartment, and all of a sudden I heard some commotion going out in the hallway. So I peeked the door open. He's like, "Get back in your room. There's a guy with a gun in this building." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I shut the door, and I didn't think nothing of it.
You didn't consider that a gun?
Well, not
Yeah,
really.
I mean, yeah, not really.
2 hours had passed, and so all of a sudden it started dawning on me. I'm like, you know what? It's probably me. So I opened the door, and I told the officer that was guarding the elevator right there. I told him, I go, "I think you might be looking for me." And I told him the whole story. And so all the police came into my room, and I told them the exact same story. I go, "Yeah, you tried taking my kid." I go, "Oh yeah, I did. I chased him out. Here's the gun, just a plastic pellet gun, whatever." But
A plastic gun.
and they were fine. They were going to leave, but the SWAT team had got called in.
Oh.
And they didn't mess around one bit. They had their ballistic shield and charged me right in front of my son, who was 5 at the time, and pulled me and took me away, and my poor son sitting in the apartment, with a bunch of strange policemen around. And
yeah,
they had to haul him to my mom and dad's. They got a hold of my mom and dad. So, that was a huge consequence, and I got charged with felony terroristic threat. Told the judge my story. She let me out the next morning. No fines, no jail time, no nothing. But because the SWAT team was there, the state wasn't going to let me off without going on at least probation. So I had 2 years probation. She dropped it down to a gross misdemeanor, terroristic threat. But you still had that language, terroristic threat, and after like 9/11, terroristic threat on your record. That still affects things today. And
that'll follow you around forever.
Well, the judge had said, she goes, after the 2 years probation, she goes, "Come back to me." She goes, "I will expunge this." And she goes, it'll be better than a presidential pardon. And so she was really super nice. And I tried doing that, but then for some reason there's a 4-year hold after your 2 years probation. You got a 4-year waiting period. Mm-hmm. So that's just came up last May. And so I'm going back to do the expungement. I'm doing all the paperwork and all the.
Wow, what a mess!
I know. So that was a huge consequence.
All because of bad decisions while drinking, right?
Yep. Yeah. And alcohol wasn't involved in like the police report or nothing.
Mm-hmm. But
I knew. Yeah. Would I have done? I don't know. I still think I would probably do the same thing in that situation.
Learn from your experience, my friend.
6.5 years clean and sober, and I still, am I sober-minded if I'm thinking that way? But somebody messes.
The SWAT team hasn't been to your house since then, right?
No charges. That was my last one, and.
Yeah. So tell me, what did you do to get sober? Did you do the whole, did you go back to treatment, or how did you get sober this time?
I had been talking to people at the bar, basically. It was a musician's bar. So there was a lot of musicians, and so there was a lot of drugs and alcohol around. And I was talking to this one lady. She told me about this recovery community, and I kept telling her, I'm like, recovery? I go, those people are weird. I would never go hang out with some recovery community.
We are kind of weird.
And right now,
I'm good with weird.
Now I am the recovery community, but she was.
Now we are the weird ones.
I know. She planted that seed though, and so one morning I woke up, and I'd quit my job because I was getting questioned. They kind of did like an intervention on me after I come home from out of town one day with a work truck, and they had GPS on it. So they're like, your spending is out, you're spending too much money. You're at bars, you're buying, I'm like, I'm whining and dining the customer. That's what I'm supposed to do. And I started questioning.
Doing my job.
I said, I'll show you. And I threw my keys at him, and I grabbed my suitcase, and I just started walking 20 miles back to my apartment. And so I'd quit my job.
20 miles? You walked 20 miles?
Yep, with no
Please tell me
money.
it wasn't winter.
No, it was early spring, but it
Wow, that's
wasn't.
brutal.
It was pretty nice out, luckily, but there was no buses running, so I kept thinking I'm just going to jump on a bus,
Bus
um,
never came.
but I was so stubborn and so determined. I walked all the way home.
Wow.
Probably stopped at a couple bars on the way, but so yeah, that's
So work gave you an intervention?
Yep, when I
And
got
that's why you got sober?
no, that's not why. But so then I made it a couple more months trying to fake it. I remember the bar manager and I had a contest of who could quit drinking the longest, and I didn't make it 2 days. I didn't even make it 1 day, I don't think. But I bought these breathalyzers so that I could test her, and I did the other one. I made it so that it wouldn't blow. You know, I could always blow in at zero, so I screwed around with it, and so I'd always show, yeah, hey, look, you know, I got blow zeros, and so I was kind of fooling around with quitting, and I knew I had a problem, and everybody around me, you know, everybody around me knew I had a problem, obviously. So I started isolating. You know, I would go to the bar and I'd just pretend to, you know, sip on one beer, but then I'd go up to my apartment room and I would slam straight vodka. And I thought it was because I drank vodka, I was frozen. You know, I drank the Grey Goose. You know, I'm a professional alcoholic. You know, I'm not like the bums.
You're drinking good quality.
All right. But it wasn't long before I was drinking the cheapest stuff, and I didn't care if it was warm or what. But I'd have to throw up every morning. Just when I looked at the bottle, I'd throw up, but I needed it because I was shaking so bad. And so one morning I called that girl up and I said, let's talk more about this recovery community. She told me about this detox, and downtown St. Paul is the worst, dirtiest place you ever want to go. And I started walking there, and first I went to the liquor store at 8 a.m, waited in line for it to open at 8, and then I walked to the detox. But right when I got there, my bottle had run out. So I walked to a different liquor store because I didn't want anybody to know, and then bought another bottle. And as I was walking back, I couldn't find the detox anymore. I just completely
Too drunk to find it. Yeah.
Yep, forgot what it was. So I had called that girl and I told her I was trying to get in there, and I told her what crossroads I was on. And she was 5 minutes later, she picked me up. I got in her car and I threw the bottle in her back seat, and I'm just like, all right, bring me there. You know, I'm done. And she dropped me off at detox. And I remember the door, it was a big, heavy door. I remember thinking, I've been to jail before, so if this door clicks, I'm locked in. And she was waiting on her car, and so I kind of was waiting for her to leave so I could sneak out, and that door clicked, and I was like, that was my first start of the surrender. And then when the adjuster lady asked me, she did the assessment, I was straight up honest with her, and she looked me in the eye, and you know, I told her, I go, I'm ready. You know, I want to do the 28-day treatment plan. Give me the magic pill, and I'll be on my way. And she laughed at me, and she goes, no, you're going to give up 2 years of your life, or you don't stand a chance. She goes, you're a hopeless case. And there's that eye contact that she made, the honesty that she had, and she told me what I needed to hear at that time. And I'm like, I'll do it. You know,
wow.
Change your friends. She goes, you're not going back to construction. You're not doing that. You know, and I listened to her. I go back trying to find her. They knocked that detox down and built a new one. But of course, the HIPAA laws won't let me find out who she is, because, you know, I want to thank her.
Yeah. There was something about her that was just authentic, and you believed what she said.
That was the connection. That was, yeah. I needed to hear that exact words. I needed to hear it straight up from her. Mm-hmm. You know, other people had told me the same thing, but just in one ear out the other. It's just that connection she made with me. That was the start. And so
wow.
She worked with me for 5 days in that detox. You're only supposed, at 4 days, they're supposed to release you, but she couldn't find me a treatment bed. there's a bunch of waiting weeks and stuff. So the 5th day, she's like, good news is I found you a bed. Bad news is you can't check in till tomorrow morning, and we have to release you right now. I'm just like, I know I'm going to drink. I just,
Right. Yeah. You knew it.
and she actually kind of gave me the okay. She goes, your detox. She goes, don't go overboard, and just make sure you get there in the morning. And I promised her that I would. So of course I went out drinking and just hid in my apartment basically. But I maintained. I made sure I was I used my breathalyzer. I'm like 0.10, and so I'm like, all right, maintain.
Maintain.
I made it. I made it to the treatment center.
You made it. That's a miracle.
It was. And as I'm walking in, this is inpatient treatment. I didn't know anything about inpatient. There's this big, huge, 7-foot tall, just giant guy standing at the door, and everybody was outside smoking. He looked at me and he goes, you're in the right spot. And that was the second thing. I needed to hear that because I was ready to turn around and just take off.
Bold. Yeah.
But when he said that, I'm like, okay. And I walked in, and my counselor was super great. And I told him, I'm typical, I'm all in or all out. So I told him, I'm going to take your job. He goes, I'm all in. I sat in the front row every day.
Yeah.
I participated, and I hung
in.
out with the people that wanted it, and got a sponsor. I just did everything that somebody suggested, I did all in. But and I even started going to school. I did 16 weeks of inpatient, and then I did 6 months of outpatient after that. I didn't have to, but they asked if you want to, and I said for sure. And that was 6 months. 6 months after, or outpatient, and then I did a year of aftercare.
Wow.
So,
what? That's really smart because just because the alcohol is out of your system, the drugs are alcohol out of your system, it takes your mind. My mother-in-law is a nurse, and she said, it takes your brain about a year to heal, to just heal. I mean, alcohol is poison, and we poison our bodies for so long, right? It takes a long time to heal. That's amazing, considering where you were coming from, that you were willing to just dig in for that long, that intensely. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think I counted, I had 26 or 27 years of using. The last 12 years, I drank every single day of my life.
Brutal.
And the second I woke up, and I wouldn't eat, I was down to 145 pounds when I went into the treatment, and walked out about 240.
240. Are you tall?
6'2". I should be right about 205. I'm at 205 right now. That's probably my perfect weight. But
you're fighting weight. That's awesome. So let's transition a little bit to what you do now, because I know you do a lot of service work. So tell me a little bit about how service tell me the kind of service you do and how it's changed your life.
Well, right now I'm going to school for alcohol and drug counseling, only because I need that. I don't want to be a counselor. I don't want to be, Hazel and Betty Ford employee 3642B, and have to do it, treatment their way. Because to me, treatment systems are broken. Like I said, when I graduated outpatient, they give me a rock, a chip, and a piece of paper saying, you're the best recovery ever. And
right, yeah.
I don't know if I tell you the tree.
Give me the tree analogy. That was really good.
The tree dies in your front yard, and you pick it up and go put it in the nice, fertile soil at treatment. It's going to start turning green. It's going to come back to life. But as soon as you get that certificate and graduate treatment, where do they put the tree? They put the tree back in the same damn hole, and what's going to happen?
Right.
You're not going to last long. So somebody had told me that once, and that kind of stuck in my head. So I went to school for alcohol and drug counseling just because I needed a bachelor's degree to get into the co-occurring master's level. There's alcohol and drug counseling, they're supposedly going to do a master's level there, but the co-occurring mental health to me, is really, I think that's one of the missing pieces that treatment centers don't really take care of. And if they do, it's
What do you
usually
mean by co-occurring? It's like mental issues or
co-occurring mental disorders, and I
like
think,
bipolar or severe anxiety, that kind of a thing?
yeah, I had really bad anxiety until I quit drinking, and then it was all completely gone for some reason.
Alcohol-induced anxiety?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. One of the first classes I took was psychopharmacology, and one of the first things I learned was, arrested development. So I started drinking at 13 years old. When my brain developed slower. That's why I'm going to be 47 here in a couple of weeks, and I still act like a 14-year-old.
Well, how long have you been sober? You should be more than 14 by now.
6.5 years now.
All right. So you're like 20.
I'm getting up there. 20, 21 maybe.
Yeah. You're on your golden birthday again.
For sure. But, so that's my plan. I was going to go to school. Plus, that's my recovery every day, forces me to do recovery every day. But then I started volunteering at this nonprofit, Minnesota Recovery Connections. It's a recovery community organization. And they offer these classes to do telephone recovery support, which is 2 different nights. I had to go for 3 hours just for a training, so you get a certificate, and then you can come in and jump on the phone, and there's a list of people that signed up to get calls. So like they're way up north, or if they can't get to meetings, so just call and just do a little accountability check-in. So I did that for a year with them volunteering. And then the next thing was they did another 2-3 hour nights was for outreach. So you just go around and tell them what recovery community organizations do, what, spread the word kind of thing, advocacy. Then I did that. And then they started doing the peer recovery specialist training, the Recovery Coach Academy. So I did that. And when I did that class, it's 1 week, 46 hours. And there's 22 of us in the classroom, 8 in the morning to 5:30 at night, stuck together all day, every day, just bearing our souls. And we just made that connection. And that was the ticket, just the peer connection, peer being equal, just changed the way I looked at everything. I grew up with, I had a sponsor at the time, and he's my authoritative figure, and I needed him, he was the grumpiest old man. He still is. And I needed him early in my recovery. I needed everything that he said and the way he did it, but he's still an authoritative figure, and then you go to the hospital, you got the clinical level, and which I don't even understand half of that language because I can't, pronounce the words, let alone define them. Right. So when I got the peer level, it was like, to me, that was the missing link, And so after treatment, before treatment, during treatment, after treatment, if we put a coach in, we could plug a coach in there.
Right.
That would, the recidivism percent is probably, I don't even know. I mean, I met people that have been to 17 different treatments, and
sure, yeah,
I've seen it connect. I've seen their spiritual awakening, right before my eyes, and that's what really started driving.
That is magical. That is a magical experience. That's a spiritual experience for sure.
Yeah. So like I said, I have a PhD in street smarts, and I believe in balance. So now I'm doing the higher education, and then plus with the peer recovery specialist, you have to do 22 hours a year and continued education and get certificates and everything, which pushes you just to keep on learning and keep,
so much to learn.
To me, addiction just has evolved. It's changed, and we need to change with it, especially, the opioid crisis.
Yeah, it's so sad.
We have to ride their coattails, like alcoholics related deaths are probably double of the opioid related deaths, but you don't hear about that because it's just accepted. It's the way it's always been. So So riding, advocacy wise and fighting for laws, we got laws passed, and I didn't know nothing about legislation and being lobbyist. And somebody told me
Wow.
that I was a lobbyist one day, and it was like, so I just kept hanging out with this, nonprofit and hanging out with the right people and the recovery community. And
Mm-hmm.
um, we wrote a bunch of grants that, we talked about a little bit about how treatment and recovery, all the grant money always goes to these, has to go to licensed treatment centers, which are already making a ton of money. Like I said, you do your 28 days or your whatever, 6 months or 2 years like I did, they expect you back because they make more money. They don't treat the mental health part. To me, that's like the chicken or the egg. What comes, it could go either way, but mental health and chemical health.
Did you, I think you mentioned in our discussion before that you had gotten like a bunch of prescriptions for.
Yep. After I graduated outpatient, I had promised my counselor when I got out, I would go get a therapist, because all they have at the treatment center is, they have like an apprentice or an intern or somebody doing their practicum. So you go spill your guts at this therapist at treatment one day, and then you go back the next week and it's somebody else. And it's like, so I didn't
Nobody
even.
knows your history. Nobody has any
So,
repeated exposure for you.
so you're not getting any mental health treatment. And in the anonymous 12-step rooms, there's not a whole lot of mental health recovery. It just, so I promised him, I went and see my therapist, and 15 minutes in, he had diagnosed me with 6 different things and given me 6 different prescriptions.
Oh my God.
Bipolar, ADHD, PTSD, anxiety, depression.
Yeah.
To me, I think everybody's got anxiety.
Welcome to being human.
For sure.
That's a lot. So were you able to find a way to balance that out? Like take, without a whole bunch of medications?
I did. After 6 months, I went back to my therapist and I said, I'm not going to take them no more, because it's not doing anything. Because, I expected when I take the pill to get high. I never had a prescription drug in my life. I was thinking, I'm going to get buzzed or high, or, I was like, that's what I wanted, or I don't know what I wanted. But, and so she had asked me, when's the last time you had a manic episode? And I'm like, well, 6 months ago. So I'm like, all right. Obviously
it's
working. So I continued for 2 years taking that, and then I quit on my own. And about 3 months after I quit, I could feel the manic stuff coming back. So I went back to the medication. I only take a mood stabilizer. It's 5 milligrams. I swear I don't do nothing, but
just enough, huh?
But yeah, and if I make that part of my routine, that's first thing. When I wake up in the morning, I hit my knees, say a prayer, do a little meditation, and I go brush my teeth and take a pill, and that's just part of the routine, and it seems to do the trick. So
yeah, back when I first started doing the podcast, I used to always end with, what do you do? Do you have a daily or weekly routine? So you have a daily routine. Do you have like a weekly routine?
Weekly routines.
Like, do you try to hit a certain number of meetings or help, meet with a certain number of sponsees? You try to run it that way, or you're so immersed in it, I'm sure that.
Yeah, I do 2 online meetings a week, all recovery meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do an all recovery meeting in person. I worked for a nonprofit. I just resigned a couple of months ago here, but otherwise, meeting wise, those are 3 take up enough. I got 6 kids, 4 different sports. So the online,
family man.
Online meetings are just so much easier. I can just do it on the phone if I'm at work, or.
Yeah.
So that's basically my service work as far as just meetings. But to me, there's more there's a lot more service work that I do. I do this mobilized recovery. It actually just switched to this advocacy project. It's with Ryan's
Oh,
Hampton.
yeah. I know Ryan Hampton.
So we went out to Vegas and started this little group. There was 150 of us that got flown out there.
Wow.
All expenses paid through Facebook. Actually chipped in a big amount of money, and then we had a couple of extra sponsors and helped out. And then I think there was a couple hundred online too, all over the world that sat in this class, and we had some big name people out there speaking. That Omar came out there. So yeah, that's the advocacy part, and changing laws and changing language and changing. If I sit and call myself an alcoholic or an addict every day, I'm shaming myself.
Right.
Whether I know it or not, I'm always consistently shaming myself. And so what the recovery coach likes to practice or teaches you is, call yourself a person in long-term recovery.
Right. Yeah.
Alcoholic's just a thing. Addict's just a thing, but I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm a taxpayer, a homeowner,
Yeah.
I'm a lot of things. So
yeah.
So changing the language is a big thing,
Yeah, words definitely have meaning. Yeah, they matter. It matters like how you rephrase, like you were talking about rephrasing things. It matters.
Yeah, like drug of choice. Maybe it was my choice the first couple times, but somewhere down the line,
Lost the ability to choose. Yeah, I hear that.
Drug of use, it wasn't my choice. I had to. It was,
yeah.
You feel normal. That's what I had to do to survive.
I get it. Yeah. That's terrible. Well, listen, we're coming up on our time, but I wonder, what are the resources that you would like to share that you think would be helpful for the listeners that are either just getting sober or maybe just looking to add a few more tools to their toolbox, so to speak?
Well, besides getting a sponsor and a recovery coach, because there's two different hats, definitely, depending on where they're at. The podcast, I'm huge on the podcast. I mean, I listen to, I binge. Omar was my first one that I ever listened to, and I listened to 90 in 90 days because that's how I did my 90 meetings. And
sure.
And then he invited me on his podcast, and I was nervous as I am now, like I'm starstruck.
I told my husband you said that, and he laughed his ass off.
I get to listen to you every day, and
I know it's like we're friends though, and that's really sort of what I had hoped, that
for sure.
We're like friends.
Charlie and Jason at the Way Out podcast.
Love those guys. Oh my God.
I get to listen to your whole story, so it feels like I know you.
Yeah.
And you've interviewed some pretty famous people, who've done some pretty powerful things, at least.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I'm blessed, and I even actually just today booked Laura McCowan. She wrote that new book, We Are the Luckiest.
I'll have to check that one out.
It's so good. Yeah, it is.
Cool.
It's the only way I read books nowadays.
Well, I can read well. I just cannot comprehend whatsoever because I start planning dinner and where I'm going to take the kids to sports, and so I'll read the same paragraph over and over. It's like reading the big book at first. It was
right.
How many people are in the room, and I'd sit and read that paragraph over and over that I knew I was going to get. Because I didn't want to screw it up and look like a fool. So
guilty. I've done that many times.
It took years before I comprehended what was actually in that book. But
yeah.
It's a great book. Saved my life. There's a lot more out there. I got hundreds of books downloaded on Audible, and they're powerful podcasts and books. Continuing education. There's more.
Yeah, it's a good way to, I had a lot of negative thinking. And when I was listening to, back in the day, it used to be on cassette tapes, and I would just listen to stuff. Marianne Williamson used to do lectures on the Course in Miracles. And I was fascinated at all her teaching, it just completely changed my perspective. But I realized later on that as I was feeding my brain good things, it like displaced all the negative things. So
Sure.
yeah, I mean, we're in the day and age of these little cell phones where all the information is right at your fingertips. So it's really cool. And I'm glad that, that you had access to all that, and that it was helpful. That's anybody that has a podcast, that's all you hope for, is that it's helpful to someone. Right.
Oh yeah.
So that's super cool. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. And it's anyone, and then you're around the world, you have people all over the world that can listen to your podcast and tell their stories. And, so we're not alone. It's
We're
like
not alone.
everybody, all over the world. And that's what really turned me on to. I did Facebook quite a bit, trying to back off. It can be
It
time
can
consuming.
be consuming. Yeah. There's some things that are good in balance.
I'll try to advertise my rings because I turned the sobriety medallions into rings.
Very
And
cool. Is there a link that you can share for that?
yeah, just allrecoveryrings.com.
Okay. I'll leave a link to it in the show notes too.
But yeah, and that's helps that's because I get to hear your story, and then people come over to my house if they're close by and make their own ring, take their token out of their pocket or the junk
Very
drawer or the
cool.
bottom of their purse, and
Yeah.
always doing.
Can I send you one of mine?
Yeah, for
Oh
sure.
my God, I'm totally gonna send you mine.
Yeah, what we were talking about, Dave sent me 3 of them, but he only gave me size for one of them, so I'm waiting for him to respond to me.
Oh, that's so funny. Our mutual friend. Don't say his last name.
No, I won't.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. It was such a pleasure to talk to you. I'm so glad that we get to be actual friends now, that we've met. And thank you so much for supporting the podcast and sharing your story.
You bet.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All
Oh,
right.
yeah. Thanks.
Carolina.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, where's there it is.